What is your superpower?
I'd probably say my creativity.
Knowing nerdy trivia.
My superpower is being a good listener.
Devising a million questions.
Helping people.
Making people laugh.
My superpower is that I'm determined and never give up.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on Voice of the Community here on our podcast. Please like and subscribe and do all the things. Also, follow us on YouTube. We've been trying to promote the YouTube a little more, so you can comment and we can have a conversation with you. Like, share, subscribe, all of the things. I'm very excited for our guest today. What about you, Erin? How are you today?
I'm great. It's a happy Tuesday, even though we usually do happy Mondays at Meristem. It's a happy Tuesday. Weather's nice. It's been a little cooler here in California. So we appreciate that in the Sacramento Valley. But super excited to have Marnie Harris on with us today to hear a little bit about what she's doing down south in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know, Harry, do you want to kick it off with a couple questions?
Sure. One thing about Marnie Harris is she runs the Shepherd's Hotel. She's doing this. We might also get into this big deal thing she's doing over at Georgia Tech. But Marnie, if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll get going.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me. Excited to be a part of the conversation and just appreciate what you're doing to elevate voices in the space. It is not cooler weather here in Atlanta, so I'm very jealous, very jealous to hear that. But excited to talk about some of the work we're doing at Shepherd Hotel and what that's looked like and where we're going.
So my first question will guide you to. So how did you actually get started in the work that you're doing? Like, how long have you been doing this for?
Sure. So I was an
So forth.
Yeah, I was an undergrad student at Georgia Tech. While I was studying biomedical engineering, thought it was an interesting subject, thought I was going to go make medical devices. And then the former dean of the business school at Georgia Tech was pulling together an advisory board to build a program for folks with disabilities at Georgia Tech. So we call them IPSE programs, or inclusive post-secondary education programs. And it was a certificate program for students with intellectual disabilities who would be able to participate in Georgia Tech classes. They'd be able to live on campus, participate in all of the extracurricular events at Georgia Tech. And she was looking for some students to get on board. So I had been involved in the disability community for years. Started in high school. I was a peer mentor for a neighbor in a class and just really connected with him, learned a ton, and was kind of blown away by how much I learned in a semester from him and from our interactions that, kind of fueled my passion for folks with disabilities. And so joined the advisory board at Georgia Tech. We built this program, launched it the year I was graduating. And I said, biomedical engineering school, but this is really cool. And felt like the program really had the opportunity not only to impact Georgia Tech, but also to impact the students and the families that we were serving. And then there's just a tremendous opportunity beyond that. So we welcomed 8 students in the fall. I stayed for a couple of years and watched those students have internships, work towards jobs. With the Excel program specifically, we were always very set on employment being the outcome. So we didn't want people to just come have a great 4-year experience. We wanted them to have a great 4-year experience, but we wanted it to get them to jobs that they wanted after they graduated. And just saw a big opportunity in the business world for businesses that were like truly valuing the assets that folks with specifically intellectual disabilities were bringing to the table. Dr. Terry Blum at the time, kind of hammered, she was the founder of the program, hammered in business is really going to be where opportunities can change. It's got to come from the business community. So I wound up in business school to look at what businesses were doing for folks to advance opportunities for folks with disabilities. And then a friend at school connected me with a group out of Clemson that was building the Shepherd Hotel at the time. She said, I love what you want to do. And there's a group in Clemson that's building a hotel that's partnering with the Clemson Life program to employ folks with disabilities and really think you should meet them. And and then bothered them enough to where they brought me on the team.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing. So we're so excited about this at Shepherd's Hotel, Marnie. We have a little bit of a well, some of them we call social enterprises, but we have we call it an Airbnb over here at Meristem. Um, we have interns, they're getting paid to clean and organize and get it ready for guests, but you have a much bigger deal over at the Shepherd's Hotel. Can you tell us the history of it, how it got started, and
Sure.
a little more information about it?
Yeah. So back in 2015, one of the co-founders, so Rich Davies, had purchased a property downtown. It was an old bank building. And it was downtown Clemson. He had seen kind of a shifting demographic in folks that were coming to visit Clemson and just saw a tremendous need for an upscale boutique hotel. Um, you guys know college towns well enough to know there are, typically commodity products, specifically in college towns. There's not a lot of like upscale luxury product in the market. So he bought the building with a vision of building an upscale hotel, held on to it to a couple years because he was trying to figure out what the right opportunity would be. And then was connected with his co-founder, Rick Hayduck, who had a daughter with Down syndrome. Rick had been in the industry for 30 years, and managing various luxury resorts, frankly, all around the world. And Rick had a daughter with Down syndrome at the time and was trying to figure out, what kind of retirement, but kind of how he could utilize his 30 plus experience in hospitality to create a space where Jameson and her peers would be successful. He'd piloted, a couple different strategies at the different resorts that he'd been in. But he and Rich came together and set up this vision for what would it look like to partner with the Clemson Life program to build an upscale boutique asset in Clemson and to target employing a collective number of folks with disabilities. So didn't want to just employ one or two people. We really wanted to be a space where we could take Clemson Life interns, they could, intern with us. And then a lot of Clemson Life students are looking to stay in Clemson when they graduate. And Clemson was busting at the seams for job opportunities that just weren't available for all the folks that wanted to stay. So we said, if we're going to do this, we need to target like 20 to 30% of our team needs to be, that's our target for folks of team members that would have an intellectual disability. So Rich and Rick came together. They were introduced through Dabo Sweeney, who's the head football coach at Clemson. And I mean, it was just we call them God weeks, but it was a series of divine intervention kind of moments that brought the project together. The project was kicked off in November of 2018. We had our groundbreaking. Everybody knows what happened 2019, 2020. So COVID hit. Great time to open a hotel. And build during. So had a very adventurous building process, and then we opened the Shepherd in Clemson in September of 2022.
Wow. Just diving in a little bit more. Is there an onboarding process for the individuals who come in, the 30% that you're trying to target, and what roles do they play throughout the hotel?
Yeah. So one of the things that we are trying to do at the Shepherd is to create a community to create systems, processes, and procedures that can work for anybody. So we know that there are sort of like customized things that we're going to have to do just based off people and, what their support needs are. But our goal is that those, as we're learning what individuals need to be supported in the workplace, we can fold as much as we can into our systems and processes so that it's just, whether you have an intellectual disability or not, you're onboarded in the same way that any of your other team members are. And, we're still figuring that out. But onboarding looks like, there are a couple different ways that people come into the Shepherd Hotel pipeline. So you can come in as a Clemson Life student where you have an internship with us. So Clemson Life does a rotation program for the first 2 years, and then the third and fourth years have an internship where interns are working 10 to 20 hours a week. We are a placement site for Clemson Life interns. They are interviewed, they're brought onto the team, trained by our managers, and supported by the Clemson Life staff that support both the student and the manager. we have, you can come in as a traditional hire, if you will. So a lot of Clemson Life students, when they graduate, if they've interned with us and enjoyed their experience, they will then apply for post-graduation employment. At that point, they're kind of already in our system, but they would just be, onboarded in the same way that a traditional team member would be, where we have a day that's called Shepherd Immersion Day. And we say, here are the mission, vision, values of the Shepherd. We place you in whatever role you applied for, and then you go through the training process. So that's kind of the second way that people will come to find us. And then the third is just if you're a community member and you have an intellectual disability, maybe you're working, maybe you're not, you find out about the Shepherd and you want to work with us. So you apply for a specific position, we interview you, get to know you, try to figure out where you're going to best fit. And then you go through, your first step is our team member immersion. So again, that's mission, vision, values of Shepherd Hotels. What are the principles of who we are and what we do? We learned a lot from Clemson Life. Their motto kind of is I do, we do, you do. So it's like when they are training and task or in anything really, it's like whoever the trainer is, they do it first and then you do it together. And then they observe while the individual performs the task. And we tried to incorporate that into all our training. So throughout the training process, that's kind of how our training is structured. We want to do it, whoever is the trainer wants to do the task first, and then we're going to work on the task together. And then our goal is that you're completing the task on your own.
Love that.
So, and as far as roles that people are filling, it totally varies. That's the magic of hotels, is that there are so many different opportunities for people to work. So for folks with IDD, they're working everywhere. There are a couple folks working at the front desk. So we've got a welcome table, which is where, guests check in. We have a public area cleaner role, which is keeping the public area spaces clean. There's the housekeeping room attendant role. So the most vital part of the hotel is making sure that people have a clean room when they come. We have an on-site restaurant. So we've got people, we set up a model where it's a kind of a running busing food model. So guests order at the counter, and then folks are bringing food to the tables, clearing food from the tables. We're piloting a couple roles in the kitchen right now. So trying to get people in the back, because we've got a couple folks that are really interested in cooking, and our chef has been amazing. So she's trying to figure out what kind of like a prep cook, line cook role could look like in a high pressure environment like a kitchen. So really that's the beauty of hospitality, and specifically hotels, full service hotels, is that there are so many different types of roles that folks can play based off of interest, skill set, whether you like working with people or not. There are lots of different ways that we can find a place for you to fit in a hotel, but specifically at the Shepherd.
Yeah, that's awesome. Harry, you got something?
Marnie, this is amazing.
Come visit.
What's that?
Come visit.
Oh, we won it.
Harry and I are coming for a football game.
Yeah,
me and Erin are on our way. But we do want to know, so how big is the hotel, and how was it? It was the idea behind building it. Like, it was already it wasn't a hotel before it was the Shepherd, right?
Correct. It was a bank. So we knocked down the bank and built a 67 room hotel. To 7 floors, the 7th being the rooftop. But it's 5 floors of guest rooms.
All the money came from the university, or you had grant money, or?
No, totally privately funded.
Whoa.
So we raised, so that was a big thing for me, and that was what was so attractive about the project to me, was that our goal is that we are a profitable business. Because our thesis and our hypothesis is that you can have a profitable business that employs a significant number of folks with disabilities and deliver a return to your investors. And we say that because we believe that specifically folks with IDD have a gift of hospitality. I think there's there's a lack of sometimes traditional barriers. I think sometimes people tend to be more warm. Our employees just have this gift of hospitality that they offer to our guests, that they offer to our team, and it makes the experience better for guests. So from a business perspective, it's like you're always looking for ways to improve your customer experience. You're always looking for reasons for guests to return. We're not saying come stay with us because we employ people with disabilities, but we're saying come stay with us because we're a super nice hotel. We're going to treat you extremely well, and you're going to experience this like compassionate, grace-filled community when you come stay with us that you probably aren't going to get in other locations that you stay in. So I say that because we raised money just like a traditional hotel would, and we have a return that we need to deliver to our investors. We were funded like 50% by an amazing bank partner that funded us during COVID, even when no other hospitality projects were receiving funding at the time. So we have had an incredible group of investor partners who believed in the mission, believed in the business, and said, we want to be a part of this. And we're willing to invest some patient capital because we know this is it was a business model that hadn't been proven at the time. So our partners have been amazing. And then our bank came alongside us and said, specifically during COVID, we're not funding any other hospitality projects, but we believe in what you guys are doing. We think this is incredibly impactful, not only for Clemson, but also for the potential growth of what this could mean beyond Clemson. And we want to see this project to fruition.
That's huge.
When you have the person with a disability in the job, well, I want to get to you mentioned something a minute ago, but once they're in the job working, how do they get support? Do they come with job coaches? Do you reach out to like VOR services that they might be a part of? Or are you job coaching yourself?
Yeah, good, really good question. And I would say we've kind of figured it out, but this is like something that we're still trying to figure out. So Clemson Life students come with Clemson Life have employment coaches. So their employment coaches are not responsible for a student's success, but they're coming alongside students. So if our managers need help training on specific tasks, if we need to be like customizing task lists or trying to figure out how to make somebody successful in a role, Clemson Life, their employment staff are kind of the ones who are fielding those things. For a community member or for alumni, and again, this kind of goes back into our philosophy of we want our managers to be responsible for the success of their team. So we take a lot of job coaching, support, et cetera. We're trying to do that in-house as best we can. On our housekeeping team, when we hire housekeepers that don't have a disability, part of their interview process is making sure they understand the mission, they understand the vision, and they understand that their role might be also supporting their coworkers who may or may not have a disability. So it's kind of like part of our training process and hiring process is, hey, if you work here, you're going to have your job to do, but you're also going to be responsible for supporting your coworkers, whether or not you have a disability. We have like just started dabbling into some other service providers like VR. There are a couple folks in organizations in South Carolina that have folks that want to work with us. So we're like very slowly experimenting with what that could look like. We've had a couple of our employees who have brought in job coaches. But again, our goal is we want to be able to support internally as best we can, kind of fueling that ecosystem of we want to be a place where people can be successful, and we've developed systems, processes, technology that are going to help make folks successful.
Yeah, killer. That's awesome. I mean, that's like what, like we have we call it transformative autism training TAP, where we try to convince employers and give them some tools to do what it sounds like you guys are already doing and have gotten on board from the beginning, which is like make this part of your culture, and then you're probably good to go once it becomes a cultural norm. What have been some challenges or hurdles that you've faced to get to the 30% mark and just to keep it going?
Yeah, everything's been really easy. Not really any, I'm just kidding. No challenges. No, I mean, gosh, I think, in a lot of ways, we're pioneering this business model. So I think, and it's been fun to have some other folks who we've been able to learn from in the process and have come alongside us. There aren't perfect answers. I think one challenge is putting the right people in the right place. Um, we want to be able to hire as many people as we can, but that doesn't mean that anybody can work any job at the hotel. Um, I would love to be a line cook. If I was on the line, nobody would come to our restaurant, um, ever. So I think, wrestling with trying to figure out the difference between what people want to do versus and where their ambitions are, and we want to train them to that ambition versus sometimes there's just a misfit placement. So I think, and that's just for anybody. But I think for specifically for folks with IDD, it's just something we've wrestled with given our mission. The training piece, and I say this, we're still trying to figure out. So our labor costs are not significantly higher, but are a little bit higher than a traditional hotel. Like, and trying to find a way where we really are promoting independence in the role and not creating these like codependencies. I don't want, if you work at the Shepherd and you don't have a disability, I don't want you to feel like you are working two people's jobs. And I don't want you to feel like, I think there's sometimes a tendency for folks that don't have a disability to just say, okay, well, I'll just do this myself because it's more efficient. And our goal is not that. Our goal is that we're creating, individual jobs for individual people that are supporting one another. And I think that balance is really hard to strike. So constantly kind of iterating there. We talk about this like in-house support role. We are about to start piloting, what would it look like for somebody could we have somebody who is part-time allocated to exclusively supporting our team members with disabilities? And that, the thought process behind that is, as much as we try to create systems processes that are working for everyone, there's always going to be some individual levels of support that are provided. And we want managers to be responsible for the success of their employees, while also acknowledging that managers have a ton on their plate as is. Yeah. So there is an opportunity, I think, for us to provide additional support for folks that might just need help getting back on track. But then balancing that with like, you want to keep the onus on the manager, because I don't want a manager just being like, oh, I'm struggling with this employee and immediately call the support person. Yeah. I want them to troubleshoot first. So that's overly detailed, but I feel like those are some of the key challenges that we're really working through, both from like a philosophical perspective, as well as we're running a business and we have a bottom line and we've got to make sure our labor costs are in line. So probably those two things have been the biggest challenge.
That's so good to hear. I mean, like, because we've come across these same challenges in tons of different employers, and I think we kind of landed more recently in the like, is there a way economically to figure out how you have that kind of person who's the like coordinator for the group of individuals that need a little bit extra support or whatever, while keeping the integrity of the system that you're talking about. And it is not a shoo-in in any regard, but I think that's the model. And it's like, I think there's a lot of people now trying to figure out the like happy median. But I think what's always maybe allows us to grow as human beings is each person with IDD or intellectual disabilities is going to be different, and it's going to come at something differently, and you almost have to develop that, like, we all need to be really flexible because tomorrow it's going to be something different than it was today. And I don't know, I often think that that's a powerful lesson for us all to just kind of become more human with each other at a variety of levels.
A variety of levels. More
That's really well said.
Yeah, isn't it really well? That's so me and Erin talk a lot about bringing somebody onto the team, onboarding. Do you have systems in place for when you onboard somebody with neurodiversity in terms of making sure that they're well aware of the company guidelines, employee handbook, the schedule. How do you, and scheduling is another big thing, keeping them on a similar schedule, time off, how the whole system works for getting paid. Like, how do you get all that information and I guess get it to people with IDD?
Yeah, really good question. Very pertinent. Was literally on a call last week where we were talking about how we could do this better. Um, so we have our immersion day, which everybody goes through, which is, and that's like the high level overview of welcome to the team, mission, vision, values. Here are the systems processes that we use. Um, we have found that some of our folks with IDD need a little bit more time to understand specifically, like we've got kind of an offsite HR process, a third party, et cetera. Um, so the Clemson Life students, the Clemson Life team helps. For non-Clemson lifers, right now it's managers and coworkers that are helping folks figure that out. That's one of the things we've talked about with this liaison role is potentially bringing in, somebody who's on the team, but maybe their job is to really make sure that people understand the processes so that, there are lots of different complications with folks wanting a certain number of hours and balancing SSI and Social Security income. So there's a fine line you can walk as an employer on an advisory standpoint, but at the very minimum, we can make sure that people understand how to clock in, clock out, get their paychecks. If somebody is not complying with the system, specifically if it's somebody with IDD, I do think what we are talking about is we want to make sure that we're taking like one or two steps further just to say, is this a lack of understanding issue? Is it a process improvement that we can make? Or are you just not clocking in because you work in, you're a 23-year-old and just like your peers, you forgot to clock in today. So kind of roundabout answer to your question of we tried to design a process that was easy. We have a third-party HR provider, Insperity. They sent their whole team when we were initially opening. They were super excited about what we're doing, and they've been great at kind of helping us navigate and make things simpler. But I do think we still have work to do to make sure that specifically our non-Clemson Life students really are kind of understanding the process and can do that in a quicker way. And that onus doesn't just rest on the manager to make sure that their employees are getting paid on time.
Yeah.
And then I should have taken a step back also because so we have onboarding, Marnie, but before onboarding we have the job description. So this job description, one thing, it's an interesting thing about hospitality, right? It's all customer service. A lot of it is customer service based, and you have a lot of people that want to do that. So I'm sure you have plenty of folks with IDD that are like, put me up at the check the guest in. I want to check the guest in. I want to be there, da, da, da. But you have a lot of people that don't want to do that. But so many times we've seen in a situation like this where in the job description, it'll just say customer service everywhere you go, even if it's like they're going to be working in the laundry room because customer service is so ingrained. How do you write and include? I'm sure you're still working on it, but the job description is a big thing if you can touch on that.
Harry, I'm so glad you said that. We're still working on it. Is my answer to everything. Yeah. We took kind of like your boilerplate job descriptions when we opened. We sent them to Clemson Life and said, do you guys have any feedback on this? And they had incredible feedback for us on ways that we could modify language from a simpler, the simple thing of like, so many job descriptions even say requires a bachelor's degree. And we're like, doesn't really require a bachelor's degree. So things like that, or to your point, yeah, a line cook like must have great, I forget what the exact language is, but it was like must be able to, converse openly with employees. And it's just like there are things that are part of these boilerplate job descriptions that may not actually be applicable to the job. So from day one, we tried really hard to make sure that first we led with mission, vision, values. So if you look at any of our job descriptions, it's like, here's the type of person that we want you to be. And that goes for anybody. If you've got the skill set, but you are not compassionate, caring, grace-filled, like this is not the right environment for you because it's really going to frustrate you if you come work with us. And then constantly refining and just learning what are the actual skills that are required for success in this job, and how do we continue to refine our job descriptions to reflect that, rather than just keeping boilerplate language in there because that's what, we could pull from wherever we found the job description initially.
That
On
makes
the
sense.
job description piece, have you guys found a way to because with IDD or autism, individuals come in with a variety of like really powerful skill sets, and then probably equally deficiencies in terms of something might come up and trigger an individual, and everything that they had that's a strength goes south for a minute. And one of the things that we've had to do with employers is say like, hey, this individual will be your best data entry person ever, but if there's a glitch in the steps, like they're out the door faster than you can snap your fingers. Like, how do you support that? And so there's kind of this a little bit of tailoring to the individual versus saying, here's the job description. Do you meet the job description? Could you talk a little bit about your experience around that?
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, like, and if you go to our website, our intake process is a little bit unique too. Like you go and you apply for a position. I mean, you'll see it if you go submit an application on our website, because I think you can see we don't have your standard, like, here are the job descriptions for specific positions. We're like, hey, who are you? Have you ever worked in a hotel? It's very conversational.
Oh, cool.
And that's for any position. So it's, who are you? Have you ever worked in a hotel before? If not, no big deal. We'll train you. That's, I mean, literally the language. It's on a type form. So
Oh,
trying to
no.
make it very accessible.
So no, what does customer service mean to you? Questions.
Do it? No.
That's a question that's like,
Yeah, I should actually, yeah, I should know but it's like it doesn't take very long to complete. The goal is very user friendly. And then we say, what positions are you interested in? And you can kind of click like, and it's kind of select all. So you can click all the positions. You can say, I'm just interested in one. And then our hiring process is that kind of gets forwarded to the hiring manager, which we're small enough to where that's like whoever is managing the team, and they'll reach out. So kind of from step one, very conversational, very fluid, which I think also reflects, like, we hire for heart and train for skill. So you asked one of the challenges. That is one of the challenges, because we got a lot of great people and then we have to train them in how to actually like make a good bed.
Yeah.
And that's anybody on our team. But I would say our management team specifically is incredible at trying to figure out where people are going to be the most successful. A lot of the roles that individual people have are not like a standard job description, just like any of our roles are not a standard job description. But really trying to figure out, like, how are we going to make people successful? So if you're a public area cleaner, this is an example a manager gave me the other day. A typical public area cleaner, we have 2 shifts, and shift 2 kind of just inherits the checklist of whatever shift 1 didn't complete. We had somebody working in that role, and we just learned, like, they are always going to start from the top of the list, no matter how many times you can prompt them to start wherever your colleague left off.
Yeah.
So, but we're flexible enough to where we're like, okay, you just work the morning shift and you always have shift 1 so that you can always start at the top and work your way down the list. And that's like a very simple example, but I think it's an example of our goal is to make you successful in your role. We've got one guy who has probably worked in every role in the hotel, and we finally found a role that fit him the best, which was, it was ironing pillowcases, which next time you go stay in a hotel, appreciate how de-wrinkled your pillowcases are, because that's a real role where somebody is sitting there making sure that your pillowcases are ironed so that they're presented well on your bed. And I promise you, now that you have thought about it, you'll notice it. And and he was struggling with some memory stuff, and wasn't a reader. So, after kind of rotating him around different positions, it was like, man, he thrives ironing pillowcases, and it's a very simple kind of 1-2 step process. So again, longer answer to your question of, we have roles and we have people, and we have people that fill the roles, and then we try to figure out how to make the people great contributors to the hotel whether or not it fits within a specific framework of a role.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because to me, it's like, it's almost like the puzzle pieces. These are the things that have to get done today to get to keep the hotel going, and here are the pieces that I have to match up. And oftentimes, I feel like, what we experience is like the job description is matched up with the things that need to get done with the hotel versus like trash the job description, take your team and say like, how do you make the puzzle pieces? And it seems like you guys are doing a great job at that.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're small enough. We're a startup in a lot of ways. Our operator was a startup. So I think, we almost started with no processes and have been building them as we go, which I think was great. We're at a point now where it'd be nice to have, we're trying to develop like, here are more concrete job descriptions, here are more concrete processes, here are more concrete step by step. So it's almost like we started kind of from scratch, so we were able to build things. And now I think in the next couple years, we'll probably see a challenge of, okay, we wrote this job description for this role. It probably isn't the best fit for this person. So I don't know. I think we've gotten the benefit of being a startup and small and nimble in a lot of ways as well.
yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I don't know. It's like growth is so interesting from this perspective. We could probably do a whole nother podcast on that one. I got one more question, and then we should probably wrap it up. Harry, do you got anything else?
We'll go for your question. We'll see what's.
This is something that we probably like. It's the breaks our hearts question, because we always, want to believe that we can help everybody. But there's sometimes where it's just like, this isn't a fit. Or, like whatever, kind of personal challenges you have going on just are not meeting the needs of the community or the team or whatever it is. How do you guys go about that? When you see, hey, this just isn't working out. How does that conversation go in your company?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes back to like our mission. One of our value statements is that we put the right people in the right seats. Um, and that goes to any position in the hotel. So I think what's really nice is that the break your heart kind of applies to everybody. There are some really well-meaning individuals that want to come work at the Shepherd, and then they're just not the right fit.
Yeah.
Period. But specifically with folks with IDD, that, twofold. One is I think our team works way harder than most people do to try to find a role that fits. Give the example of the guy who's rotated everywhere. We will rotate you as into almost any position in the hotel.
Yeah.
And if, so I actually, and I don't know if we have ever let somebody go for lack of fit, because I think we've always been able to find a fit that works. There have been some people who have opted out and who have said this isn't the right fit for me, which, that's easy.
That's a win, I'd say.
It's a win.
People, like say, hey, this just isn't working.
What about someone that's going to stay on? Well, because you have some people where it's a communication, the feedback loop, and you just need to tell them how they can improve, or meet with them weekly. Do you do weekly check-ins, or?
Yeah. So, and this is where this liaison role, we really want to pilot it, because we have a couple employees that I think now that we're 3 years in are struggling to perform the job. And is it, I think our question before we get to a point of this isn't the right fit for you is, have we done everything in our power to make this the right fit for you? And that's where we really want to pilot this liaison role to say, do you just need some support to get on track? Or do you just hate working in hospitality? And are you tired of cleaning bathrooms? And would you be better, would you be happier in a retail space where you're engaging with customers a little bit more on the front end? So that's where the liaison role is coming in. But I would say, the way we handle that are 1, rotate, 2, we're trying to figure out a role that can provide additional support for folks if the challenge is additional support. And then ultimately, it's the same conversation we would have with, and we have had with any other employee is, hey, this may not be the right fit. Here's what you want. Here's what you're good at. Here is what it takes to be successful here, and we just don't see those things matching up. Harry, to your question, we do when you're hired, we do 30, 60, 90 feedback sessions. So we meet with a manager 30 days in, 60 days in, 90 days in. We have, unless it's like a grievous offense, we have, kind of like a three strike policy, where, as a manager, we call it feed forward, not feedback, because we really want to give you input that is going to help you get better. And I think our management team takes that very seriously. And that starts at like the Rick, who's the GM level. He loves developing people and is very good at developing people. And I think that rolls down to every level of his staff. So we're very intentional about, if there's something happening in the moment that needs to change, we need to address it in the moment, because if you wait until the end of the day or you wait until next week, the lesson's going to be lost. So we've got kind of these structured feed forward sessions, but then we also just have a culture and philosophy of, if you see something in the moment, please make the correction in the moment, because that's the best way for people to learn and for the long term of the employee success.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marnie. We do have to wrap up here, but we want to thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful. The podcast will release, I'd say within a month, maybe. But Erin, any final words?
No, I just say it's so cool to see hear about the work you're doing, Marnie. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to different companies. Like Jacob connected us with you,
Yeah.
and it was cool to talk to them and see how they're going about it. And it's just inspiring. We're in our little niche in Sacramento, but it's cool to see kind of this national movement that's happening in all these different places where businesses and people are just saying like, this is the way. And I think this is the right path. Like, obviously there's nuances in figuring out the systems and stuff like that, but I think it's the right direction that we need to go as a society. And so just super grateful for your time and for your effort, and to hear, and for you to share, because we hope that people listen to the podcast, and when they listen to the podcast, it's like, oh wow, that's one way to do it. And and it's inspiring to a bunch of people that success is possible. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and just for your time. And again, for elevating these stories. I think it's important, and it's important that we're all learning from each other and acknowledging like it's not perfect, but we're moving in a direction that we think needs to happen, because unemployment is real and it's a problem that needs to be solved. So
yeah.
Great words to end with. Thank you.